one of the fundamental rights and honors of every adult citizen in democratic countries. In some places, votes count more, in others less, but we comfortably live in the illusion that our opinion will change something. In most countries, voting is simple. You mark your candidate on a piece of paper, which you then drop into a transparent box. You pray that the votes will be counted with as few irregularities as possible, and in the end, the one with the most votes wins. However, in the USA, the system is much more complicated. It often happens that a president is elected with fewer votes, and where there are unnecessary complications, there I profit. Where we will clear up all the confusion about the reality show we call voting in the USA. I assume you all followed the elections in America and surely heard the term Electoral College 100 times. This is the most important thing to understand. There are 50 states in the USA, and every 4 years, each of those states selects electors who will then vote for the president and vice president of the entire USA in the next election. So when you vote in the USA, you don't vote directly for the president. Instead, you vote to tell the electors of your state who you want them to vote for. Then, for each state, the electors must respect the will of the people, and when all the electors from all the states gather, they vote for exactly the candidate that the people chose in the state they represent. There are a total of 538 electors. Out of those 538, 100 are senators, 2 per state, and the remaining 438 are representatives of the House of Representatives. Now, not every state gets the same number of electors, but approximately proportional to its population. For example, California, as the most populous state, gets 55 electors, followed by Texas with 38, Florida and New York with 29 each, etc., all the way to the smallest states that get 3 each. So for example, you live in Chicago, Illinois, and that state has 20 electors because it has a lot of people. You come and vote for your candidate, and it happens that your candidate has the most votes in all of Illinois. If he has the most votes, 20 electors see what the people have decided, and all 20 must vote for that candidate. Whether the popularly chosen candidate won by 1 vote or 1,000,000 votes, all 20 electors must vote for him. Repeat this process 49 more times for all the states and once more for the District of Columbia, or the capital city, Washington, D.C., and the one who gets the majority, which is 270 out of 538 electoral votes, wins. Does an elector have to follow the will of the people? Well, they must, but it has happened that an elector acted against what the people chose, and then they were punished by being declared innocent. Joking aside, they are given a fine, which can easily be paid if their candidate gives them more money than the fine. It's a bit weird. This system can create a very confusing situation where a candidate with fewer overall votes can win because they collected more electoral votes, and that's how Trump won in 2016. Even though he had 3 million fewer votes, he collected 304 out of 538 electoral votes. Time for a bit of math. Imagine that the USA is only 4 states, one with 30 million people, and the others with 8 million each, making a total of 54 million people. Let's say one elector represents 1 million people, meaning this state has 30, and the others have 8 each, 54 in total. In the largest state, candidate A wins, barely, by a few thousand votes, but still he gets all 30 electoral votes because he won. In the other 3 states, candidate B wins overwhelmingly and has more people's votes overall, but those states collectively have only 24 electors, 6 less than what candidate A got in just 1 state. This is not impossible at all, and as we can see, it happened just 4 years ago. This brings us to the question, why is this system so complicated? I've noticed one rule that permeates all the topics we cover. If something is complicated, the reason is almost always because the system is outdated. When the founding fathers of the USA were designing the system, they realized that today's system of democracy, where everyone can vote, was impossible. Not because they didn't believe in democracy, but because the country was huge, while communication and transportation technologies were at the level of horses and letters. So how could you count all those votes in such a big country? You couldn't. They had to devise a system where the residents of each state would vote, and then the representatives of those states would gather somewhere and represent those votes. So back then, it made sense. Now it doesn't make sense for it to exist anymore, but it creates some interesting outcomes, and it gives me topics for videos. Seriously.